Yes, the words manifest like the steam on my breath. Condensation on my mind, beats bringing the rest. Riding through the beat and the clef.
Hi guys, it's Anders, and I've just been having a look at the new tape emulation plugins from the guys over at Multimedia. And I'll just give a quick impression straight off the start of the video before we do A/Bs and things like that. I'm impressed. They sound really, really good. I'm also comparing them to the UADs and the Slate Digital VTM. That'll be in a separate video, but if you want to check that out, absolutely stay tuned for that. I'll probably put it out the day after this. Like all in all, value for money for what you get. Like 5 stars, 5 out of 5. It's awesome that you get these 4 different emulations. You also get 4 different types of tape, so like the tape chemical compounds, sort of thing you could change on the J37 on the Waves one, and that's across all 4 emulations, which is a really nice touch. Being able to control like the bias and things like that per plugin is also really, really great. So for the current offer, it's on at $99, I believe, and then it's $199 for all 4 after that. When you compare it to something like VTM, which is $149 on its own, it does give you 2 emulations, but it's kind of limited by comparison. We'll side by side those, like I say, in another video, and you'll really see where that extra value is coming from. And even compared to the UADs, like pretty impressed. So what I've done, I've written a short track and I've got all 4 loaded up, and we're just gonna go through them, look at the features and how we can change it, what type of tape emulation each one is, and we're just gonna have a listen through them on my track. So be sure that you like drum and bass. If not, you can probably cut away right now. Let's get into the video.
Okay guys, so here we are in Logic as almost per usual. And I've got loaded the 4 different tape machines that come with the Multimedia tape machine bundle, if you will. Now, they're all modeled to look similar to the original hardware that they're modeled off. However, each one's actually pretty much got the same feature set. So I just really want to quickly go over that so I don't have to explain it for each plugin as we load it up. So let's get them all nice and tight together here. Pretty much all of them have 2 large knob controls, right? So we can see like here, 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 and I'll highlight them all. This is either the input on the left hand side or the output on the right hand side, and it's the same for all 4. They look a little bit different and they're located in slightly different areas, but exactly the same functionality. We've then also got this reset switch next to usually that first input knob. Some are done as a button, some have got a little switch with a red LED, but again they all do the same thing and they reset the tape machine to its default state. Then we've either got like some button dials or some sliders across different ones, and I'll highlight it on all the different ones, but it's our bias, our level, our high frequency EQ, all of those are different parameters. Again, they're in like slightly different locations across all 4, but the same parameters are all there. And there's also the auto cal, like the automatic calculation based on the input signal switch for these as well. Again, that's in slightly different locations on all of them, so I'll highlight that on the screen now as well. We've also got the ability to switch between the tape formulas like I explained in the intro, and we've got the 250, the 456, 499 and GP9. The 456 and GP9 are probably going to be the most famous. I think I can compare those actually with VTM and maybe even the J37 from Waves, so we'll look and see if we can compare those in the future. Pretty sure both of those have those 2 formulas emulated as well. And then we've got a speed control. In this case we've got 15 or 30, that's most common, and we can switch between the 2 of those on all of them, but again all in different locations, right? We've then got true stereo and transport modeling as well, and again slightly different locations, slightly different GUI, but highlighted all on the screen. So hopefully that breaks it down that actually they all have exactly the same controls, they're just laid out in a really different way. So super quickly, this is the project I've got. At the moment I've got all of the tapes loaded up on here, and I've got the J37 as well. We can get rid of that, we won't use it for now. And just at the end of my chain here is the tonal balance. I have that at the end of the chain most of the time. It doesn't affect the sound at all, just lets me know what's coming out. So everything is disabled at the moment. I'm just going to play you through the track so you can get an idea of what it is, how clear it is. If you wanted to recreate this at all, pretty much all of the drums are from the Singo Maker's Summer drum and bass. Then I've got a couple of extra snares, like my own personal snare. The bass line / lead line is made in Hive 2, that's my own preset. But apart from that, you could pretty much recreate this. If you like the sound of the drums, probably worth checking out that pack. Anyway, let's just let this loop through. You can get an idea what the track's about, and then we'll have a look at these tape emulations. Sweet, that should be enough for you. So super punchy, super bright, pretty aggressive drum and bass track. However, everything's a bit loose and a bit separated at the moment, and what would be good would be to have like some glue on the track, and I think that's what we're going to use the tapes for today, so we can listen to the whole track running through them. So we'll just go through them in the order that I've got them loaded up. So we'll start off with Tape Machine 24, and this is a recreation of the JH24, probably the least known tape machine to myself. Apparently it was used really heavily in the 80s because it's actually a very clear sounding recording, and this will be a lot of that sort of 80s big snare reverb sound was recorded onto. And when we play it back here, we do get a little bit of like compression glue, but overall it is still pretty clear. I'm going to dial this in. What I've been doing on some of the others is pushing the input, so it's just below clipping, maybe on the 1 dB side. That seems to be where it sounds the nicest, and that's causing me to have to take the output back by about 4.5 dB, so we've got a nice comparative loudness. So let's just dial that in right now. Cool, so for this tape machine I had to dial it back 3.5, and we gave it a boost of only 2.5, so there's sort of that decibel of discrepancy in there, but that's fine. It's going to be changing the profile, and it could be giving a little boost somewhere. Let's just A and B it with the default settings, and we'll have a listen to Twisting the Bias. Adjusting the bias is one of the ways that you could really abuse tape. You could either get that really artificial high-end lift, or you could flip it the other way and make it kind of a little bit darker but hell of a lot warmer and get a lot of low and mid distortion, and it's emulated really well in the ones that I've tried so far. So we'll give that a little twist around, and we'll A-B that, and then we'll move on. First 4 bars off, 4 bars on, and then repeat that pattern from there. So hopefully you can hear there, it is doing a little something. It does just glue it together a little bit. When you turn it off, you suddenly get a little bit more of the transient pop through, and it's a little bit sharper again, but it feels looser and less held together. What I'll do now, I'll do it over an 8-bar segment with it on, and then take it away, and hopefully you'll be able to really hear that change. cool. So I really like what the tape's doing. It's gelling it together. It feels a little bit like an SSL kind of feel when you just sort of tickle it, but it's doing a lot more than that. It's quite nice. Let's try the bias, and we'll push the lows up and then switch the highs round and just see what we get out of it. If I don't get any nice feeling out of it, I won't A and B it. Well, so we only added a tiny bit of level there, and it jumped to like 5 dB above where it should have been. So we are going to stick a limiter on just for the rest of this video, just to make sure we don't destroy ourselves. When we push the bias to sort of this 0.7 range here, we're getting a lot of extra warmth in the low end. This could work really well if we had it just on the bass track. And I'm thinking I'm going to move this over and try it out just on the bass now. So the bass is inst 1 here. We're going to drop it on. So this is no longer on the master bus. It's just going to be affecting the bass line. That's very cool. So it's adding loads of extra like harmonics and weight to the bass line, but it's not actually affecting the overall profile of my track, which is really nice. That's quite tasty. I'm actually going to leave that on the bass line for this track. Let's move on to the next one. So on the next one, I did the Studer A80, I believe. Yep. I'm just going to mute the previous one, the bass, we're working from the same reference we were before. Now this one's already set, basically because I was absolutely loving the vibe it gave here, and I should probably just keep it set like this on the bus, and might put it in at the end, we'll see. But I'm just going to A and B this for you. I've set it up very similarly to how the last one was. It's got a little push on the bias. It just sounded so good. This is also what is emulated with... This is similar to what's been emulated with UAD. They have the Studer A80, which is the multi-track recorder, whereas this is like the mastering tape option. And the J37 is also this, but the J37 is a modified version. It was modified by EMI. So I'm going to compare them. They shouldn't be identical, but they should have a similar feel initially. So let's A-B this guy, and yeah, I just love this. This was my favorite when going through them before. Do you know what I think might be nice to play with is slowly raising that bias as you come to the end of like a crescendo on 16 bars, and just slowly pushing it up, and then for like the next drop just taking it away. Like if we were to just push it up over a few bars, you just feel it get bigger and rising. It's kind of a really nice vibe. You could definitely like trick a listener into that, into like feeling it without changing the track too much. It just like rises in intensity and fury. Absolutely loving this. That's a good A and B for that. I would genuinely say download the demo and check this one out in particular. It's just a little bit special, really, isn't it? It just A and B so well. It glues everything together. It just, once it's switched on, everything's just boom. It's there. It's flat. It's together. It's how we want it to be. And that bias just adds a load of warmth, especially to something that's kind of harsh like this track. It's a good bit of flavour. I can really see it being useful on snare drums as well. If you want to just amp that body up of a snare drum and just compress it and make it a little beast, this is going to be the way to go. So let's move on to the next one. Fab. So this guy is the ReVox 99. If you've ever seen like old footage from something like the BBC where they literally had a cutting room floor, it was basically these tape machines or the Akai version. So they're like the little stood up blocks with the two big reels on the top. And they had like a cutting block so you could pull the tape down and physically cut it on the machine. That was these guys. And I actually had one of the Akai ones for a few years, but it was a pain in the backside to keep calibrating. So hopefully this is going to be a lot nicer. Haven't actually really played with this one. I've just A and B'd it in default, so I need to set up the input and output. But yeah, let's get a vibe for that. I'm going to gauge it roughly like we did with the last one. I'm going to already push it up about 2.5, dial it back about 3-ish, and we'll just dial it in from there and then we'll A-B it. Cool, so with this 99 I had to push it a little bit harder to get the same like input level and distortion level that I was after. I've also had to dial it back a little bit further, 4.5 dB, to get a similar level. So let's A and B it, we'll go over 8 bars again, off and then bring it in and then back off again. Okay, if you didn't catch that, I'm going to do it again. I'll switch off to 4 bars, focus on the snare, listen to how much the snare changes. Like the transients get rounded off and it just becomes this like thing just stuck in the middle of the mix and it pops it out really, really well. Just really focus on the snare. So my snare is really sharp. I even call it my sharp snare look, or yeah, my snare sharp. It's my own one I made that always cuts through the mix for me. This is just like crushing that out really, really nicely. So yeah, focus on that snare. Listen to the difference when I switch it on. So I got so hyped up there I missed the cue point, but you just hear it when you switch on. You just get that perfectly just coming in and just hitting like. Oh, I love that. You know, like I did on the bass, I'm just going to try putting this literally on my snare track, which has got a reverb on it. Just sod it. Let's put it after the reverb. Let's see what it's like purely on the snare on its own, and let's have the other tape on the bass as well. So now this is with the 99 on the snare, and the 24 on the bass. And again, I'll do that first bit without them on, and then we'll just try and get them both switched on. So I've tweaked the 99 and absolutely slammed, done 50 dB up and 13.1 dB down on the snare, just to give that like thwack coming in. It works really nicely. I'm liking the vibe. Maybe slammed it a little bit hard now and taken too much of the transient away, but there's gonna be a happy medium somewhere in here. Anyway, I'm digressing from the video because I get excited and like producing music. Let's move on to the last one. So this is the 440, which I want to say is the Ampex 440. If I'm wrong, fine, slate me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's right. And this has been emulated by just about everyone who's done tape emulations. I think Saturn covers this. No, not Saturn. Satin from Yuhi. As well as I think Oxide Tape is a version of this as well. And there's probably a bunch of others out there. It's one of the famous tape machines. Let's just A and B it. Let's set it up real quick, what we think it's going to be, and have a little listen to what it does. So about 2.5 push, I reckon about 4.5 back. We'll just dial it in so we've got a nice even level, and we'll work from there. Wow, okay, so massive difference, especially on the high end here. I really hope you can hear that. It just dulls off straight away. We'll maybe tweak the bias and just see if we can get that high end back. But as an actual A-B comparison, I'm going to leave it as it is and see how we feel about it. So that's not my jam at all. It does give the feel of like an old degraded tape type, absolutely. Just yeah, not feeling that much at all, to be honest. Let's try tweaking the bias, see if we can get the high end to come back to some degree. But I'm not really sure what we're going to get out of it. Let's find out. Alright, so that's nicer. So I've gauged the bias back a little bit to prefer the high end, and I've also pushed the level up on the bias and a level up on the high frequency EQ as well. And that's given a better balance, but it still gives like a degraded tape feel. Now, It could be down to the formula type as well, but we're going to go back to the Studer and have a look at the different formula types and how they change. If I was to go through all 4 tape machines and all different speeds and everything, we would be here all day long. And it's so much louder now that I've added that little bit of level. I'm going to have to gain this back, I think, probably to like 8.5 maybe? Okay, so this guy, the 440, is the first one that I prefer it without, to be honest. It just sounds nicer and clearer and punchier without the tape machine. I can maybe do some tweaking, but if I wanted to have like a degraded, more of a lo-fi feel, this would be the guy I'd be reaching for in this instance. Just doesn't suit what we're doing here. So let's get our Studer back. We're going to make a copy of it because I liked it on my snare. So let's just open up the Studer. So this is the one that I preferred the most, and I left it on the main bus. We're going to leave it set as it is. And what I'll do, I'll switch between the different tape formulas, and as you can see on here, by default it's on GP9. The tape formulas are set per tape emulation, by the way, so you'll notice that some of the others have different tape formulas on, but that's what we're doing. We were going over their defaults here. We are now going to test out all the different tape formulas on this variation here. So I'll let it play 8 bars and I'll switch formula, and I'll do that throughout the whole 32 bar loop. So listening through those, GP9 without a shadow of doubt gives the most detail in the high end. It pretty much goes like lowest quality and they just get better as they go around. That's, yeah, simple as that. Just for fairness, let's open up the 440 because I think that was set to 456. Yeah, it was set to 456. Let's just test it out on GP9 and let's give it a second chance. I'll do it with all the bias settings and everything. So even with the GP9 tape formula, it still feels low quality and lo-fi-ish, which is just not what I'm after, but it's an effect that we can absolutely use and will be useful in something, just not what I'm after here. Still doing a nice job, and I love that we can switch the formulas between all of them. By the way, I understand that we've looked at these on different formulas and where they're all preset. If you want to see each tape emulation and all its formulas and its various speed settings and the different biases for each individual one, let me know down in the comments. If a few people want that, I'll go and create a video for all 4 of them. But I will be doing the comparisons with the UAD and VTM as well. So all in all, really impressed with this. Super happy that you can just get like a flavor and feel really quickly by dropping them on various elements in the mix, and like they're not exactly CPU intensive, like we've got a whole bunch on right now. And yeah, CPU says it's about half, but it's going to trickle down to be almost 0 once that closes. Yeah, it's barely getting touched, which is very nice. All in all, really impressed. I think value for money, absolutely through the roof. All in all, guys, I hope the video was helpful for you, and I will see you on the next one.